Well, you see, what happened was the spare on my trailer is like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years old, and it came apart just hanging on the spare tire carrier. So I had to order a tire to put on my trailer, and I normally do that, you know, just with bars and putting it on the floor. But I watched a couple YouTube videos, and I've ordered some stuff, and I went down to Harbor Freight and bought this. I still have to put it together. Got me a nice pile of trash going here. But I will spare you the agony of going through the entire assembly of this thing. It is extremely simple. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the edges of this before I put it together, so I can weld the base together so the base is nice and solid. Cut. Who's the director? Man, I'm so prepared for this. I got this stuff laying all the way on the other side of the shop. You know, I've said it before, I need somebody to help me cut and edit and direct videos and stuff. So I'm going to bolt it to the floor with these. These are just drop-in anchor bolts, 1/2 inch. All you need is a 5/8 drill bit and this special punch to put them in. I've used these before and they are very solid. As I said, I watched a few YouTube videos before I did this project, and a lot of people said they had problems with these little bars and the bead breaker bending, and also the tube bends that this attaches to. So I ended up, after I tried it and bent the tube, I ended up making a new tube out of thicker wall pipe. Those are just two problems that you'll have that you need to modify. This is cutting the rubber pads that I needed to protect the wheel. These pads are actually cut out of a piece of old conveyor belt, but you can cut them out of the sidewall tire, any kind of heavy rubber floor mat, stuff like that. This is just using a hole saw to cut out the large steel washer that I needed to put on top of the aluminum center cone that I made in my lathe. The biggest piece of aluminum that I had was only 3 inches across, so my centering cone wasn't as big as I wanted it to be, but it does work. You'll see it all in a minute here. That's the diameter of the main shaft it has to go around, so I have quite a ways to go. This is the tube that'll be going over the top of this. I used the biggest hole saw I had, and it is just big enough to catch the edges of that. So that's going to work. And this will keep it from biting into the aluminum cone. And I can still use something like this with this rubber pad if I want to. This right here is part of a weight bench I bought many years ago at a thrift store. Paid way less than what the steel would have cost me. So this will be the last project I get to use this stuff on, because that's all that's left of it. Now I just have to figure out how far out I want this to go. This will be like that, stick out about that far so I can get the leg coming down. And I'll make this about that long so it'll slide back and forth. And then I'll take the other piece, another piece of it, weld it to the back side of it in a T like that so that it sticks down. Run another piece of this through that, something like that. And that's how I figure out how stuff's going to work for me. Just kind of do it all in my head, and we'll see what happens next. This was like an Olympic weight bench, big heavy weight bench, but it's actually got 1/2 inch thread in it. It's not metric. All right, some things have changed. The weather's gotten a little cooler. Long sleeve shirt. There's a seam in this tube, which I've marked, and I'm going to put this on the opposite side of the seam so that the pressure will be left to right and won't be against the seam, and that seam won't be dragging against the center column. That's going to go on there, and instead of using the square tubing on the outside edge, I'm going to use round tubing. Now I'm going to figure out how long I need to make this outside upright. And this is how I normally do things. Either with the tubing or with sticks or whatever. A couple of pieces of wood work wonders a lot of times. No real dimensions, I just set it together. I'm going to weld that on right about there. Be about that high. I don't have the duck head yet, so I don't know what the distance is going to be here. I know I'm going to need at least that much tubing right there. So I'm going to probably cut it a little extra long. Give me plenty of room. That ought to work. I have a video on how I built the saw that I'm using there. Go to my YouTube homepage and look under my playlists under tools and equipment. It's under that Harbor Freight bandsaw. Of course, if you weld enough of these in, you're going to weld them in at some point in time off to the side, and they're going to hit the edges. I've drilled these holes plenty big, but I just take a piece of wire, run it down on the threads, and that keeps it centered up for me, so I don't end up with it binded on the threads after it's welded. Well, here we have welded together a bunch of pieces of steel. I think it just might work. I've added one more thing. I've added this, because when you loosen all this up and you go to pick it up, it's going to fall out of there. So this can be put there to make it repeatable for depth, or it can just be put on here to make it not fall apart. Now, one other thing. What's the worst thing that happens in your shop when you're going to go try to do something? No, even worse than that. You can't find the bolts that hold stuff together. So this bolt that goes down through the center of here will go down through this plate. It'll have the thin washer on top of it. It'll have this washer underneath of it, and this self-locking nut will be run all the way up on it so that it's a loose fit, so that that bolt cannot fall out. Then when you drop it down over there, that bolt will be locked in place in here, and you just drop the whole thing down on there, spin it, it will lock it on down onto there and keep it held down. And you are right. Everything else has a T-handle on it except this. I don't know why. Oversight, I guess. But I did think about this. Bet you were wondering why this wasn't a full round plate. That's so I could see through there while I put that self-locking nut on there with a long extension and a socket. I think it'll work. Now we just got to wait on the duck foot, duck head, ducks, whatever you want to call it, and make a plate for the end of that. Alrighty then. Are you happy now? That little oversight has been repaired. Now it is good to go. Now we're just waiting on the duck foot, duck head. You know, duck whatever. I can never get that right. Well, in keeping with the great spirit of overkill that I usually do around this shop, I've decided that a little piece of plastic in here wouldn't hurt because there's a little excess play. So I cut the side out of a jug for cat litter. I cut it exactly the right length so that it just about meets right here where the seam is. The only problem with this is going to be once it's in there, getting it lined up. As you can see, it's a little rusty and dirty. I've already had it in there. Had to take it out for all the welding. But sliding it up in there, like I said, is the tricky part. And getting it to stay. And of course, it's not going to work this time. Almost there. Alrighty then. Well, I will keep attempting to line this up. Learning to drive a sheet of plastic. Is that a manual transmission sheet of plastic or an automatic transmission? Because I know it fits. There it is. I got it. And there you have it. Lined up with the seam all the way. And it does work. It works, but it is absolutely not necessary. And it's in there, it pivots. And because the inside of the tube that I used here is so rusty, it stays put, doesn't slide because it's so rough on the inside of this tube. Anyway, I don't know if it'll last at all. It should last a little while. Well, the keystone part that's been holding up this project has arrived. Trace around it, cut it out, drill a couple holes in it, weld it on, and change the tire. So I decided to make a protective cover for the bead breaker so it wouldn't scratch alloy wheels. And let's see how this turns out. I almost uploaded this video without adding this. I don't know if it really needed to be added or not, but somebody's going to ask how I made it or what I made it out of. So it's just made out of a plastic bucket, and it's just bent around the head of the bead breaker in the best way that I could find with the heat gun. And it ended up working out pretty good. It seems fairly durable. Hasn't shown any signs of trying to crack or split on the couple tires that I've changed. And this is what it looks like when it's completed. It does have a little bit of a tendency to get caught between the bead and the tire if the bead doesn't come fully unseated, but it's easy enough to wiggle it and take it out or press the bead further down so you've got more space. But it stays on here pretty well, and if I have to, I can always put a little bit of a clamp around it to hold it onto here. But I've changed 2 tires with it and it works good. Well, I did not record welding the bracket to mount the duck head onto the tubing, but if you're interested in seeing how this thing worked, go on over and check out my other video, Tire Changer Modifications First Use. It shows me using it for the first time, and I gotta say, I wish I'd have done this a long time ago. Hey, I want to say thanks to everybody for watching my videos. Thanks for sharing them. Thanks for subscribing. If you happen to be watching one of my videos and you see some pile of scrap metal, it looks like it was welded together by somebody who just happened to get access to a welder,
that could be a tool that I built. So if you want to look around on my channel for some of my other videos, just go over to the home page, click on the playlists, and look under tools and equipment for the tools that I've built. I've also got a V8 engine Celica that I'm building. I've got a full playlist on that. I've got a street rail buggy that I'm working on. Been working on that for 4 years, but I promise it's going to get done one day. So go over, check out the playlist, see if there's any other videos you might like to watch. And again, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and above all, share my videos. Thank you very much.